This is the story of how taxpayers were ripped off while officials here in Minnesota were apparently asleep at the wheel. They didn't wake up until after we began investigating almost 2 years ago. Since then, there have been more than $750,000 in refunds and a criminal conviction. But as our investigation found, taxpayers may be owed even more. His name is Jerry Werner, the salesman at the center of a massive multi-year scheme to overcharge police and sheriff's departments, arriving at criminal court this summer.
He pled guilty.
Michelle Aldean is the prosecutor who handled the theft by swindle case against Werner, the former fleet manager at Nelson Auto in Fergus Falls. For years, that dealership held the state contract to sell Ford police SUVs all across Minnesota.
And then certainly restitution here is the goal for the state, is to make sure all the victims are compensated, brought back to whole. And at this point, the agreement included all dollars for all contracts.
Just how much money is involved? Werner's boss, dealership owner Brent Nelson, told investigators in a recorded interview that Werner's personal share was at least $325,000.
I think the overcosts were occurring because he wanted to put more money on the bottom line. He was basically making a 40% commission.
In all, refund checks went out from Nelson Auto earlier this year, totaling more than $803,000. Overcharges that state officials repeatedly missed until Carol Evans started crunching numbers and asking questions almost 2 years ago. It's April of 2017 at the Maplewood Police Department, and the hunt under the hood is on.
It should be in the car, right, because we did not get a deduct.
What can't be located,
I don't see it.
by the city mechanic is an engine block heater.
I'm not seeing one.
We didn't either,
But Police Chief Paul Schnell's department paid for an engine block heater.
and it's not on the car.
Just one example in a Carol Evans investigation that uncovered Minnesota taxpayers charged hundreds of thousands of dollars for features on police vehicles that either are not there or, in many cases, like with this spotlight, were paid for twice.
We've been paying $187 for those.
Under the state-issued contract for police SUVs, it spells out what must be included in the standard base package at the contracted price. There's engine block heaters, rear windows that can't be rolled down from the back seats, spotlights, and heated mirrors. But when Carol Evans went line by line over Maplewood PD's vehicle purchases, we found they were charged an extra $79 for engine block heaters, $187 for the spot lamps, $53 for the heated mirrors, and $30 to make the rear windows inoperative.
Based on the findings that you've uncovered here, we've paid for items as add-ons that were or should have been included in the base price of a car.
Double billed.
Double billed.
To understand how we expose this double billing scheme, we'll need to take you behind the scenes of Carol Evans' investigation.
Look at the spotlight now.
It all started when we met with Steve Kleiber, a private citizen with both a law enforcement and vehicle purchasing background.
But you see what I was showing you.
Yeah.
Steve claimed that back in 2015, he discovered the St. Paul Police Department had been overcharged for spotlights and heated mirrors on some of their squad cars purchased using the state's master contract with Nelson Auto of Fergus Falls.
It's pretty simple. They were supposed to provide black and white. This is what we provide. Here's the price, and they weren't doing it.
St. Paul took what Steve discovered and demanded a refund. So Nelson Auto cut this check, paying back more than $13 grand. Suspecting the same thing might be happening at other police departments, Steve took what he'd found to State Patrol's Vehicle Crimes Task Force and the Department of Administration, the state agency which oversees the contract. In an internal email, a State Patrol investigator wrote, "It could be an interesting case. Maybe just a theft by swindle, but it involves the dealer who holds the state contract for vehicles. Not just our vehicles, but many other divisions." But Steve says he was largely ignored and nothing was done.
My frustration level was pretty high because I took it to the people that I thought should deal with it and address the problem, and basically nothing's happened.
Nothing for 2 years. So Steve reached out to Carol Evans Investigates, and we were about to uncover a scheme that authorities now say overcharged taxpayers all across the state more than $1 million. Using public record requests, we started by auditing the SUV purchases of 20 different police and sheriff's departments. We discovered every single one of them was double billed, including South St. Paul.
It's probably a couple $100 a car that we're paying too much for.
A couple $100 per car may not sound like all that much, but consider the dealership that had the state contract sold 558 of the Ford Police Interceptor SUVs in 1 year alone, worth roughly $15 million. We're talking real money here.
I can't imagine what the dollars could add up to. I can't imagine.
We discovered the double billing
I was paying for two, but only getting one.
happened in agencies big and small.
Across the state of Minnesota, the taxpayers are paying for things that they aren't getting.
And certainly some of the things you've uncovered, this is widespread.
We upgraded.
When we started investigating back in 2017, the examples of double billing on police squad cars we found were coming from the same dealership, Nelson Auto in Fergus Falls. The point man was fleet manager Jerry Werner, seen here on a company website.
Nelson Auto Center offers a variety of vehicles.
It's Jerry's name on all the double-billed invoices we discovered, which is why we paid a visit to his 5,696 square foot riverfront home.
Mr. Werner, AJ Legault, I'm from KARE 11 News. I wanted to talk with you about the double billing issue going on with the police vehicles.
No comment.
Well, this was going on a long time. Were you intentionally trying to rip off police departments?
He wouldn't answer our questions.
Were you incompetent, sir, or are you a crook?
But before long, the state BCA had launched its own investigation. The result? These criminal charges, theft by swindle against Werner. Investigators said they found evidence that from 2014 to 2017, 205 different agencies were overcharged. Since he made a 40% commission on all profits, the prosecutor said every overcharge put money in his pocket.
Unfortunately, it went on for quite some time.
At first, Jerry Werner denied the charges. His attorney argued the double billing was accidental.
There were mistakes made, but they were honest mistakes.
Were they just honest mistakes?
What Jerry did was try to make an extra buck whenever possible.
These are recordings obtained by KARE 11 of two employees who worked in the fleet department at Nelson Auto. They told BCA investigators they knew the overcharges were morally wrong and confronted Jerry Werner years ago.
Jerry, why do you think we can keep doing this? Why are you insisting that we keep doing this? And we've had the argument with him, I don't know how many times, I can't tell you, because we felt it was wrong. Like, I morally felt like this is not right. He just ignored us, basically.
And according to the criminal charges, the double billing continued.
This appears to be a case of misplaced trust in a state vendor?
I would say a huge misplaced trust, unfortunately.
Although Jerry Werner was charged, the dealership owners were not. Brett and Laurel Nelson said they had no knowledge of and did not approve the overcharges.
None of us had any knowledge of this.
In fact, the BCA recordings show they cooperated with the investigation.
I'm sick with what happened here, totally.
The Nelsons say they launched an internal review which found widespread improper billing, so they fired Jerry Werner, who they claim took 100% responsibility.
Werner basically came in and said, listen, I've done some things wrong. There were some double billings.
I'm angry. This is a very frustrating experience to have had a state contract taken advantage of like this.
Matt Massman, the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Administration, canceled the state's multi-million-dollar contract with Nelson for Ford SUV police vehicles.
You've stripped the state vendor of the contract to sell police vehicles?
Yeah, we did that in April as we became aware of the breadth and scope of the fraudulent activity that was going on here.
KARE 11 also found double billing on other contracts Nelson Auto had, including Dodge Chargers. The state launched an audit which found, from 2010 to 2017, Nelson Auto overcharged $803,309 on 3,225 different police vehicles sold to hundreds of agencies. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and State Patrol fell victim, along with state corrections, the DNR, 6 tribal governments, Regions Hospital, Metro Transit, the Airport Commission, and city police and county sheriff's departments across the state.
Obviously, the biggest surprise was that someone had the audacity to try overcharging law enforcement.
The dealership owners promised to make full refunds to all the ripped-off police agencies.
We're absolutely going to cut those checks back to the people.
But our investigation did not end. even when those refund checks started going out. From police and sheriffs to state patrol, Minnesota law enforcement buys thousands of squad cars. But when KARE 11 put a spotlight on those purchases, we found the numbers just don't add up.
These numbers don't match, not even close.
That's Steve Kleiber. Retired now, he has a background in both fleet sales and law enforcement. He's the same man who blew the whistle almost 2 years ago when he suspected Nelson Auto in Fergus Falls of double billing for options like spotlights and heated mirrors on squad cars. KARE 11 investigated and discovered Kleiber was right.
Were you intentionally trying to rip off police departments?
No comment.
After our reports, Jerry Werner, Nelson's longtime fleet manager, was charged with a multi-year scheme of theft by swindle. As a result, Nelson Auto sent out refund checks totaling $803,000.
That's a lot of money. But what we found now raises serious questions about whether the state missed hundreds of thousands of dollars in other taxpayer overcharges.
It's pretty obvious.
We asked Kleiber to review invoices we got through a state open records request. Never before seen by the public, they show what Ford charged the dealership for a car, then what the dealership charged police. Example, this SUV sold to St. Louis Park.
Can you tell us, based on these invoices, what the profit made by Nelson Auto was?
Sure.
After crunching the numbers,
So they made a total of $1,143.87 profit on this one vehicle.
that's significant because Nelson Auto won this state contract by saying it would make a fixed profit of just $224.94 per SUV. It's called the Total Bid Constant, or TBC, and the contract defines it as all dealer profit.
That's the way I read the contract.
We wanted an outside expert, so we took Nelson Auto's contract and all the amendments to Mark Becker, a private attorney specializing in government purchasing contracts.
What's the legal definition of all profit?
It really does mean what it says. I mean, all means all. And it's as easy as that.
480.
But time after time,
24.
when we asked Steve Kleiber to examine the actual invoices, he discovered Nelson Auto was making much more
0.95.
than $225.
$1,253.80.
That's what they made in profit off the one vehicle.
One vehicle.
Some of that excess profit is due to the double billing we exposed last year, but the invoices reveal other problems.
Let's take a look at this.
State officials apparently missed. KARE 11 discovered that in 2017, Nelson Auto tripled their profits on some sales. It got the state to amend the contract because Ford was increasing prices. But records show Nelson pre-ordered cars at the old price level, then billed police departments like Rosemont at the new higher price. That gave Nelson an extra $750 profit per car the state did not know about until we told them.
But it's definitely not within the spirit of the contract.
Despite that concern, Minnesota's Assistant Commissioner of Administration, Kurt Yoakum, told us they'd done contract amendments to reflect a higher base price from Ford. So that $225 total bid constant, the cap on dealer profit, went out the window, despite what the contract actually says.
Even though the amendment says all prices, terms, and conditions remain unchanged, they changed?
On that amendment, yes.
But after the state dug a little further into those pre-ordered cars, they discovered even more problems and changed their tune, claiming the pre-order tactic by Nelson Auto resulted in some police agencies not getting vehicles equipped the way they ordered. So they fired off this letter to Nelson Auto. It says, Nelson's deviation from the structure and intent of the contract resulted in a monetary windfall, was detrimental to law enforcement, and the state is seeking reimbursement for the difference in price on 279 vehicles. That's at least $209,000. But so far, Nelson Auto's owner, Brent Nelson, is refusing to pay, emailing the state the practice was legal and demanding this issue be submitted to arbitration or put in the court system for resolution. But that's not all we found. There's the so-called government price concession, or GPC. It's a discount Ford gives dealers when they sell to government agencies. Records show Nelson claimed it was $2,900, but the invoices reveal they were actually getting $3,056. An extra $156 per car on more than 2,000 sales. That adds up to more than $370,000. The contract says any increase to that GPC money must be immediately passed on to the state.
Did at any point Nelson Auto inform the state that they were getting more money from Ford as a GPC?
They did not.
After Carol Evans' discovery, the state sent this letter to Nelson Auto calling the GPC issue a potential contract violation. Dealership owner Brent Nelson replied acknowledging the discrepancy, but saying the overpayment was Ford's mistake and Ford, rather than taxpayers, should get that $370,000 back.
They've made the claim that that is money that's owed to them.
Ford declined comment, claiming GPCs are a proprietary arrangement. And finally, we discovered a so-called hidden holdback.
On a St. Louis Park, it's $232.
It's an extra 4% discount from Ford the dealer pocketed on factory-installed optional equipment like air conditioning and rear-view cameras.
You'd be making more on the option than what you were supposed to make profit on the entire vehicle.
The contract says dealers were required to submit a printout of optional equipment listing the lowest manufacturer to dealer price available. It goes on to say that if there's an additional percent deduction for dealers, it must be indicated and given to the state.
That has to be disclosed to the state and passed along to the state. Well, that's what the contract says.
But the state wasn't told about that hidden holdback either.
Was any percent deduction disclosed to the state?
No.
Steve Kleiber estimates that extra discount could total hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Money that you believe belongs to taxpayers?
Yes, absolutely, according to the contract.
But on that point, the state still does not think there's a contract violation. In the long run, the state argues allowing a little flexibility on profit encourages more bidders and greater competition.
It also was never our intention to completely eliminate profit from the options.
That's not the way I read the contract.
But in the eyes of both a contract attorney and a fleet sales expert, Minnesota taxpayers were taken for a ride.
The cities and counties are trusting them to do the right thing and getting them the best price. Obviously, that doesn't happen here.
Coming up, a state lawmaker calls for tougher action to protect taxpayers.
They need to take them to court, obviously.
When double billing the badge continues.
What happened is we misdiagnosed the warning bells, if you will.
In the wake of Carol Evans' investigation exposing the massive police car double billing scheme, Department of Administration Commissioner Matt Massman instituted a new fraud policy and hired a compliance expert just to review state contracts for abuses.
Frankly, to deter any potential vendor from, doing something similar on another state contract.
But some lawmakers aren't satisfied.
They've said it was taken care of, and then something else happens.
State Representative Sarah Anderson, the chairwoman of the State Government Finance Committee, said she's frustrated that even after Carol Evans' original reports about double billing, the department still missed other overcharges.
Obviously, taxpayers getting fleeced.
She's called for legislative hearings next year. Meanwhile, the state continued to find additional overcharges involving so-called package pricing. Hennepin County bought an SUV for the sheriff's department. It included the Ready for the Road package, priced and sold for $2,979. But Hennepin was also charged $797 for front headlamp lighting, $371 for tail lamp lighting, $415 for rear lighting, and $481 for ultimate wiring. 4 components already included in the Ready for the Road package. The state calculates the package pricing overcharges on just one vehicle cost Hennepin County an extra $2,109. In the wake of that finding, the Department of Administration ordered a new audit to look for similar overcharges. And what about Jerry Werner?
This was going on a long time.
The man behind the cop car ripoff. Like many white-collar criminals, he cut a plea deal. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail and 5 years on probation, and paid back his share of more than $1 million Nelson Auto has already refunded.
I morally felt like this is not right.
And for the other dealership employees who tried to warn Jerry Werner years ago,
It's been a lot of pressure for a lot of years.
it means the nightmare is finally over.
To feel like I had to be part of something I didn't want to be.